Hello, everyone, and welcome to the classiest episode of Cinema Sitdown. My name is Thomas Delzite, and I'm joined with
Cass.
I'm Nolan.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Kayla.
And today we watch Back to the Future, and we're going to take a trip back in time to talk about that in just a second after this intro. And welcome back. So, if you haven't seen Back to the Future, it's a movie about going back in time. And I just wanted to briefly ask all of you if you had seen this movie before.
I hadn't, not until this point. So I feel like now I'm cultured. I have now seen the movie that I'm supposed to have seen as a potential film student. So.
I haven't seen it either, honestly. I'm happy that I did, though.
Me too.
I've seen bits and pieces of it, but I can finally say I have fully watched the whole thing.
Woo.
Thank you.
I watched all three in one night once, and it was terrible, but awesome.
That's the way to do it. That is the prime movie. Well, actually, no. I don't recommend doing it all in all in one night. Space it out by about a day. Get a little bit more time to really appreciate it.
I think I was like sick or something. I didn't have
That's
any
understandable,
banana, but
So
it was great.
I absolutely adore this movie. One of my favorite movies, and that is the reason I brought it. Upon finding out that not many people had seen it, I decided to take it upon myself to make all of my coworkers see it because it deserves to be seen. So I wanted to quickly ask, what were your thoughts about this movie before you saw it compared to after you saw it?
I just kind of knew that it was a movie about someone going back in time, and then they say Back to the Future at the end, and that's about it. I just knew that it was really popular. And then after, I was like, oh, that tracks. From what I expected to happen. So yeah, I don't know. That's kind of. I don't really have a whole lot of thoughts. Not a lot going on up here. I'm not gonna lie.
I've seen like references throughout a lot of media, but I didn't know the actual plot. I thought the whole story was Doc and Marty like doing stuff through time. I thought the whole story was them together. I had no clue it wasn't, and also the mom.
So were you surprised in the
about
first probably 15 minutes where Doc is shot and killed by
Spoilers.
terrorists?
Yes.
I was not expecting that.
I was too. I did not know that happened.
And like, can we just mention like when you were just like, eh.
Yeah, no, he gets shot about 15 times, and with each bullet he decides to do a little dance move.
Watch your mic.
What
Don't
about
ruffle too much.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I saw it. I think I saw it for the first time when I was like 5 or 6, just because it's one of my dad's favorites. And then obviously that wasn't the marathon. That happened just a couple years ago. But I didn't have any expectations going in because I didn't really know what movies were. So my dad was just like, "Hey, sit down. I'm gonna show you something." And so he did. And so I just knew it was good since I've known that things could be good, I guess.
Fair.
So it was like your baseline for movies, in a way.
Yeah, which is a terrible baseline to have. Because then everything else afterwards is disappointing.
Very true. Well, I'm glad that you think it's good, because if you said that it was a terrible baseline to have because it wasn't very good, I was about to push you off the set. So yeah, something that I...
Cast an answer.
Oh,
How
right.
dare you?
I expected this movie to be about going back in time. This I did know. And they were going to get Back to the Future. There's the time machine, which I saw. The doc was there too. Didn't know about the dog. That was a cute little surprise. And I loved the ending as well.
So something that I absolutely love about the movie is its usage of planting and payoff, something that's also commonly referred to as Chekhov's gun. And the idea of that is that if you have a loaded gun that is set up in the first act that is mentioned, it will go off in the third act. And what Back to the Future does is it plants so many little seeds, and then most of them doesn't even call back to. It's just something that you have to notice. So one of the biggest ones in the movie is at the beginning. The first location that they take the DeLorean to is the Twin Pines Mall. And he's talking about, oh, I remember old man Peabody lived here. He had this idea about breeding pine trees and selling them. And then when he goes back, he ends up at the Twin Pine Ranch. Then when he's escaping their DeLorean, runs over one of the 2 trees. Then when they go back to the new 1985, it is now called Lone Pine Mall rather than Twin Pine.
Wait, I didn't see
I did not notice that.
There are so many Easter eggs like that. Especially, you want to talk about just one movie. The entire trilogy is full of those. Almost everything comes back around. One of my favorite examples of this is the usage of the models and how he has the over the course of the 3 movies, every single time he has to build a model for something. He goes, "Oh, I apologize for the crudity of this model. I didn't have time to make it to scale or paint it or anything." And it's like the nicest recreation of the town that they could possibly have.
Exactly.
Does that in every movie, no matter what. Doc Brown is
like
immensely talented. And just the fact that no one acknowledges this, and they have this setup of him just being really smart, but also just an absolute lunatic. And
It's the best kind of people.
His eyes are crazy.
Christopher
got
Lloyd
those
kills
crazy
it.
I
Yeah.
saw him for the first time. I was just like, he's scrunkly.
That's a very good description of him, Scrunkly.
He, sorry.
So he's also been old forever.
Yes.
Been old.
He's like, you said he was like 86 now?
He's 84.
84?
Like IRL.
I would have said he was
40
like
years ago?
60, 70 already.
Yeah, in the movie.
That's maybe.
So a fun production thing that I'll briefly summarize because we talked about this before we started recording is that during the shoot of Back to the Future, he is wearing prosthetic makeup to make him look much older during everything that takes place in 1985. This is because he's supposed to be already pretty developed as a person. In 1955, him being born, I think they set up later, he was born in like 1910 roughly. So we take this information, and he's an actor who you can't de-age, but you can, well now you can increase his age with prosthetic makeup. So they have him in prosthetic makeup in 1985, so when they go back, that's just how he normally looks. So I believe in the shooting of this movie, he's roughly 40 years old, around that. So he's not the oldest. But he looks much older because of the prosthetics.
He's
so
like got a
then,
foot in the grave.
another one of my favorite details is then going on to the second movie, is that they have an explanation because they didn't want to have him wear prosthetic makeup for the entire rest of the trilogy. So he goes, "Oh, well, it's the future. I had a prosthetic surgery, and now I just look younger." And he peels off the makeup that they use on the set for this movie, and he says, "Yeah, I'm however old, but I look like this now."
You'd really like this trilogy.
I love this trilogy.
I almost just want to like go and watch that scene specifically, just see like how
Yeah.
the peeling looks.
I'll pull it
honestly.
up after the show. I bet I could find it in like 15 seconds
I
on
know
YouTube.
I know you will. You're enjoying talking about it.
I love this movie. Is that a problem?
No, I don't think so. It's fine.
Another thing that I want to talk about with the planting and payoff is the plutonium. That is probably the
Plutonium.
thing that is talked about the least, that is the most important.
I was wondering what happened to that.
I think it is set up and paid off, I think, 3 different times over the course
Please
of the
tell
movie.
me all
Yeah,
3
how
of those.
so?
Tell me
So,
every
like-
single one.
So the first
Explain them
time
all.
is during the intro sequence, we have this long one shot of all the clocks going through what we assume is Doc's house. Later find out is just a garage that he's living off of and doing experiments out of. We land on a TV that turns on as part of this automated routine, and it talks about how it was stolen, but now they're summing it up to just
I
being
have a question.
summing it up to just being a miscalculation. Yes,
So Doc is rich, right?
he was.
But we
He's-
don't know how he lost his money, or we did find that
He
out.
spent his entire
Entire
fortune
family.
building the
You're
time
right. Yeah,
machine.
he
said
did say
that.
that. Okay, I forgot.
Okay.
There's also a little bit that we find out later on that he's, in the course of this, destroying his own reputation.
Do we also know where he got his money from?
Family.
Okay.
It's his family's
Family money.
What's that called? Family's fortune. I guess.
Inheritance.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So
Okay, that's number 1. What about number 2?
so then it's paid off needing the plutonium to actually go in time. We see that it's under his bed. So that's the planting payoff, the first 10 minutes. Second time it's planted and paid off is he's about to go into the experiment. He's about to drive off for the first time. He goes, "Oh, what am I doing? I need to grab another thing of plutonium, or else I'd only be able to go one way. That would be foolish of me." And then Marty leaves without taking in more plutonium.
That one I
remember that.
missed.
And then
I
later
thought
on,
about that.
a little bit less major in a dialogue sense, but more major to the plot, is them needing to replace the electrical component that the plutonium would create with the lightning, causing the third act of the movie.
I think if I was in Marty's situation, I would just have a panic attack and then not make it back.
No, I wouldn't have had.
Yeah.
I would have been freaking
And
out if I
no.
was in another
He
time
put
zone.
too much effort into making everything too difficult.
I was going to say, frankly,
He really tried too hard, and I think it could have all been avoided if he just shut up.
if I were Marty McFly, and I got back to the year, if I was living in 1985 and I got back to 1955, and I had more than, I don't know, $40 in my wallet,
You
Buy
can
a house.
buy so much.
Buy a house.
invest, get rich, just live in the past,
Yeah.
doesn't really matter.
Don't in the second one, doesn't he bet on all the like games?
Yes.
And everyone's like, how do you know all the stuff that's gonna happen? Because he like wins all of them.
So actually, that's his plan. He gets thwarted by Doc, who says, "Hey, numbskull, that's a bad idea. But Biff has other ideas. Oh, go watch the second movie. Go watch the second and third movie.
Biff.
Maybe I'm gonna go watch the second and third movie later tonight. You don't know. I might.
I got an exam. I can't do that, but
Yeah, well.
You have an exam tonight?
tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow.
So, I also, something else I wanted to ask is, what is your impression of the dynamic between specifically George and Marty? Because I feel like it's very
George
different
is the
between.
dad.
George
yes,
is the dad.
Yes, George the dad.
it's very different between a lot of, I guess, protagonists. Because George becomes somewhat of a sidekick to Marty for part of this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what it did feel like.
It was interesting. I don't know. I know that, like, I don't know. I thought Marty would, like, at least withhold some of Doc's being like, you can't mess with anything in the future. You can't. And then he proceeds to do everything to mess with everything in the future. But then eventually fixes it. But, like, oh my God.
He made the future better.
He did.
He did.
I think
He did. He
got
said
very
the
lucky.
thing. He said, Doc said, with mind to it, you can do anything you want. And then he said it to George, and then George said it back to Marty. And,
And
then,
then George
and
took
then
it.
he had his books. I thought that was really cool.
Marty's the main character
He
in
is
George's
the main
book.
character. He literally is, because, like, Darth Vader thing.
Yeah, like I feel like they're dynamic and like I don't know. It feels like it's from the same era, but like it kind of gave me almost close to Ferris Bueller and Cameron vibes because like in the Ferris Bueller movie, like he's all going crazy and doing stuff, and he's like, "Hey man, come on."
Or Cameron's a lot more reserved. He's
And
a
he
lot
just-
more cautious.
exactly,
He
yes.
thinks twice before every decision he makes.
And he's like, "Oh, I
whereas
don't
Ferris
know."
is more just like, yeah, no, I know that this is.
So
what-
that's kinda what I
he
feel
is
like-
made of confidence.
Parallels almost, except without all the fourth wall breaking.
That is a really good comparison, though, because Cameron is like one of my favorite characters in anything ever. But then George is, they even kind of look similar.
Like with the hair.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's just like an '80s guy thing.
Yeah, but George was in the 50s though.
Yeah, well,
He kind of saw that same like slick.
Yeah.
So I think that their dynamic is really funny to me because I picked this up more than any of the other times I've seen this movie, where George, to an extent, doesn't like Marty for like the
No.
first half of the movie, which I feel like isn't super uncommon. A lot of movies you'll see where like, oh yeah, you have the classic dynamic duo where they don't like each other until the
Don't.
end of the movie.
Yeah, like
But in this one, it feels like even at the end, he respects him, but he's not like, they're not like super good friends or anything.
Now they're like, thanks, I guess.
Yeah.
Go
Yeah.
away.
like I think go
Marty
ahead.
kept pushing him out of his comfort zone and making him do things. He literally was like, I don't want to do this at all. But Marty was like, I don't really care. You're going to have to.
yeah.
And I was kind of surprised George was like, he did push back, but he still did it.
Right.
Because George was like, kind of scared of everything.
Whoa.
So I always like there's the shot at the end where George decides to stand up to Biff, and you see him like he has this really goofy face where he's like, and he kind of scrunches up and he closes his fist in the most robotic way possible, and then manages to wallop him just completely out cold. I love that face, as goofy as it is, because there are a lot of like really exaggerated emotions in this movie. But that's I feel like that's fitting for him because he is someone who, for his entire life, even past this, gets pushed around by the same guy. And then him completely breaking and changing his character to fight back to save someone that he cares about. And even at the time, he doesn't even care about Lorraine all that much. I'm not saying he doesn't care, but like he's just doing it because he's like, yeah, the girl's pretty or whatever. And then he's like, oh, I have the chance to do the right thing. Out cold.
Yeah, it's just like instantaneous character development, but not in like a bad way
Right.
almost. Because you see almost like in a lot of, I don't know, TV shows, movies, et cetera, sometimes the character just changes like that and you don't see any build up, you don't see anything. And that's kind of what happened in the sense where he immediately just went from freaking out to beating the crap out of Biff.
It was, I think the rest of the time as well, he was thinking, okay, well, I want to change, but I don't know how to change. And if I do change, what if I don't like what I change into?
Yeah.
So I think that in that moment, he was put in a situation where he basically had to say, this is a decision that affects more people than just myself.
Yeah.
And in that becomes a better person.
I like that.
I think it's
Very
why he has such difficulty doing it. Like how it's so dramatic and like you said, like robotic. Is just because he has no idea what he's doing.
Yeah.
Like not a clue.
I honestly, I misremembered this. I thought that when he closed his fist, he put his thumb inside, which you're not supposed to do. It's like
Don't do that.
It's like a
His thumb,
classic, like, a guy who doesn't know how to throw a punch thing. And I 100% thought that's what he did. No, he full fist, absolutely closed.
So he does kind of know what he's doing.
Dude, you don't
though.
even need to.
At least a little bit.
So one thing that is unfortunate about only watching the first movie
Oh,
is
boy.
there are a lot of things that are repeated throughout the 3 movies that it's sort of a planting and payoff across an entire trilogy. And I want you guys to try and guess. I'll give you just try and guess what one of them is. I'll give you a hint. A lot of them revolve around Biff. A lot of them revolve around Biff.
I'm not gonna say anything. I know.
I know in the second one, I think it's not Biff, but it's Biff's kid. And he has beef with Marty. And there's something with the hoverboard
Yes.
that he jumps on. And he basically does the same skating thing in the town square, but with the hoverboard.
So
Biff's kid does it?
Yeah.
Oh.
I believe in all 3 movies there is a skateboard style chase. And I believe in all of them at different points in the movie it revolves in Biff's kid and Biff's, in the third one, grandfather eating poo, quite literally. So
Okay.
I love how this movie is set up in a way that it was designed to just be one movie. They had not written Back to the Future 2 or 3 at the time it came out. They were not intending on making it.
But they set it up so well.
They did set it up
really did.
really well.
They
Exact
set it
same
up very
scene.
well, and they this is gonna sound really bad when I phrase it like this. They made the same movie 3 times, but because they painted it in such different ways, it feels so rewarding to see how each of these little characters pay off. So like even the little characters like there's Strickland, we're like, oh, this guy ever have hair? He comes back in all 3, and he's basically the same person in each of them, showing us like, okay, well, some people if unaltered will not change. And you also, in the third one, you see a little bit of where he comes from, too. So it's taking these characters that ultimately don't have that much to do with the plot other than just like, oh, Marty accidentally is the reason for Chuck Berry. He's accidentally the reason that Hill Valley has Goldie Mare as its mayor.
I did like that.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. I was like, oh my god.
Like all
He
the little
unintentionally
details.
has created, and there's a lot of theories about paradoxes and stuff, but I'm not going to talk about that because it's boring.
I mean, yeah, there was that when he saw himself. I didn't really
Yeah.
see that one
Oh,
coming either.
then you'd like the second movie.
Yeah.
Is it just
Yeah.
going to be like a whole room of clones from different timelines? Be like, no, you're me. You're me.
This would be very
giving,
interesting as the only other person who's seen
what's
this
the
Back to the Future 2
Family
and 3.
Guy?
This would be very interesting
What?
for
That
them
one
to try
Family
and
Guy
guess.
episode.
Yeah,
watched it.
we should do that
What
for
the
the
fuck?
regular
I've
episode.
seen
Yeah.
it online. I haven't actually watched the episode. I just know of it. So we're talking without you.
We've had a very good idea, and I think that I would like you each to submit your ideas for what Back to the Future 2 is going to be about.
You mentioned betting on races.
I guess we kind of spoiled it.
Dang.
And you also mentioned the
Spoiled
hoverboard,
again.
so I can only imagine that he's just going to be running away from
I bet
Ricky's kid.
like, okay, I'm probably completely wrong, but you know, if it's following what they said at the end of the first movie, is it? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
The
Does,
beginning of the
like-
second movie is the last 5 minutes of this movie.
Okay. Does Marty's kid just like completely eat it and just basically dies? And it's like, oh crap, we gotta fix it.
That'd be funny. I'd assume
Just
no.
like on the hoverboard and just goes, psh.
I mean, no.
What do we
What?
say?
What do you mean?
No, but it's a similar theme where they're like, oh,
Okay.
your kid's a dunce, gotta fix him. So, I just realized that we talked more about the other 2 movies than we did about the original, but that's
Yeah.
okay. What are your thoughts on this movie if you had to give it a rating?
What's our scale?
Out of 10.
Out of 10. Out of 10 DeLoreans.
Out of 10, yeah, let's do out of 10
Okay.
DeLoreans.
I want to give a shout out to the special effects and the practical effects because it's been a while since this movie was made and they still look really good in my opinion. Obviously
Yeah.
it's a little aged, but I think it looks good overall. I give this like an 8 out of 10 DeLoreans because it's just a classic and everyone has to see it.
I'm gonna give it like I want to say 10 because it is my favorite out of the trilogy.
Ooh.
And it's also just kind of perfect. So yeah, we're going to 10.
I don't think we need to ask your rating. I think we might know already. I'll give it like a good 8 too. I think. Yeah, I liked it. I think it was nice to finally watch it. I get the hype. I get it.
I'm gonna give it a 7.5. So like really close, but listen. Here's my reasoning, okay? Again, like
Stop.
Okay, hold on, stop. Let me explain. Okay, so I agree with what you all said. Like, I love the effects, and just I had fun with it. That's like what really kind of gets me for a movie. The only reason it's not like an 8 or a little higher is one,
Mom plotline.
yes, and
Oh,
two,
yeah.
I might drop mine down to 7.5
Yeah.
for that reason too.
yeah,
Actually.
and two, it's just like not my favorite genre, and that's nothing to do with the quality of the movie. Otherwise, it is
Okay.
really
I can
good. I liked
respect
it a
that.
lot.
Yeah. Well,
And obviously, my answer is going to be a 9.5 because I agree. There are some things that if I were going to do this, I'd do a little bit differently. Maybe don't have the mom
mom
kiss the
plotline.
kid. That's
Yeah,
a
that
little
was a
My
bit
mom
awkward.
actually,
But
yeah. Mine too.
it's whatever.
Yeesh.
So thank you very much for joining us on this episode of Cinema Sitdown. I've been your host, Thomas Delzite. Do we do? And I don't know.
I've been Cass.
I've been Nolan.
I'm a Sam.
And I've been Kayla.
Thanks for watching.
Bye.